I walked into a Tractor Supply outside Lexington on a Tuesday morning in early October. The first thing I noticed was the pallet near the front entrance. It was stacked with galvanized buckets, the kind that used to sit in the back corner under dust. Now they were front and center, 3 deep, with a hand-lettered sign that said limit 4 per customer. I stood there for a minute, holding my coffee. I thought about the last time I had seen a limit sign on something as ordinary as a metal bucket. It was March of 2020. Nobody around me seemed to register it. A man in a Carhartt jacket walked past, grabbed 2, and kept moving. A woman with a clipboard checked something off and moved on to the chicken feed aisle. Whatever was happening here, it was happening quietly. I have been watching this store and stores like it for the better part of 18 months. I read the quarterly filings. I read the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, cold storage reports. I read the trucking volume data out of the American Transportation Research Institute. What I have been seeing on the shelves at Tractor Supply, at Rural King, at the small farm co-ops that still exist in places like Eastern Tennessee and Western Pennsylvania is a pattern. The mainstream business press has not connected it yet. Inventory is shifting. Certain categories are quietly being marked down to clear, while others are getting limit signs. Manufacturers are consolidating, imports are being rerouted. The people who shop these stores, the farmers and the homesteaders and the retired tradesmen, they are picking up on it before the rest of the country. I am going to walk you through 13 items I have been tracking, 13 items that, based on what I have observed on the shelves, in the data, in the public statements of the people who move this country's goods from port to pallet, are going to become harder to find or significantly more expensive within the next 12 to 18 months. Some of these will surprise you because they are so ordinary. One of them, the last one I will share, I did not see coming until I traced it back to a regulatory filing buried in a Federal Register notice from this past spring. When I tell you what it is, you are going to understand why I am putting all of this on the record now instead of waiting. Let me start with what is sitting on those shelves right now. Number 1, the cast iron skillet, specifically the Lodge 10 1/4 inch, which Tractor Supply has been selling for somewhere between $22 and $28 depending on the week. I bought my first one in 2011 for $15 at a hardware store in Asheville. The same skillet, the same exact model, was $41 at a Williams-Sonoma I walked past in Nashville last month. That is the spread. The Tractor Supply price is one of the last honest prices left on a piece of American-made cookware. Lodge has been casting iron in South Pittsburgh, Tennessee since 1896. Their input cost on pig iron has been climbing steadily since the steel tariffs were restructured in 2018 and again in 2024. The United States Geological Survey has been tracking pig iron pricing. The per-ton cost has moved from roughly $390 in 2019 to over $560 in recent quarters. That cost has not fully passed through to the retail shelf yet. It will. When it does, the Tractor Supply pricing structure cannot hold. I would buy 2 now, 1 for the kitchen, 1 for the cellar, wrapped in oiled paper. A cast iron skillet properly cared for outlasts the person who buys it. Which brought me to the next thing I noticed in the aisle right behind the cookware, sitting on a shelf that had been twice as full a year ago. Number 2, the kerosene lanterns. The Dietz original, the red one with the brass fittings, the kind your grandfather kept on the workbench. Tractor Supply has been carrying them for around $25. I walked the lantern aisle in 3 different stores across 2 states this fall. The inventory was visibly thinner than it was in 2023. The reason is not mysterious. Dietz lanterns are now manufactured almost entirely in China in a factory in Hong Kong that has been producing them since the 1950s. With the tariff schedule that took effect under the 2024 revisions to Section 301, the landed cost on these lanterns has climbed somewhere between 15% and 22% depending on the shipment. The retailers have been absorbing it. They cannot absorb it forever. What the people in import logistics have been saying publicly in trade publications like the Journal of Commerce is that the second half of 2025 is when those absorbed costs start hitting shelves. A kerosene lantern with a 1-gallon can of K1 kerosene stored properly will give you light for roughly 45 nights of 4-hour evenings. That is a winter That is what your great-grandparents called a winter's worth of light, and it cost them less than a day's wages. It still does, for now. Pick up two. Pick up the spare wicks, and then walk with me to the feed aisle, because what is happening in the feed aisle is connected to something larger. Number 3, whole grain. Specifically, the 50-pound bags of whole corn, whole oats, and hard red wheat that Tractor Supply sells as livestock feed. The corn runs around $14 for 50 pounds. The oats, around $22. The wheat, depending on the week, between $18 and $24. These are food-grade grains. They are grown in the same fields, harvested by the same combines, stored in the same silos as the grain that ends up in the box cereals at the grocery store. The only difference is the bag they end up in and the markup that gets applied. A 50-pound bag of whole oats from Tractor Supply, repackaged into Mylar with oxygen absorbers, will store for 25 to 30 years according to the storage research published by Brigham Young University's Food Science Department. They have been running long-term storage studies on cereal grains since the 1970s. The USDA's grain stocks report from this past September showed that domestic wheat stocks were at their lowest level since 2007. Corn stocks were down 9% year over year. The reasons are layered drought in the upper Midwest, export contracts to fulfill ethanol mandates that have not been adjusted. The result on the shelf is the same. Buy the wheat, buy the oats, buy the corn. Store them properly and you have insulated your household from grain price volatility for a generation. I will tell you why this matters more than it looks. First, I want to take you to the back of the store where the fluid pallets sit. Number 4, diesel exhaust fluid. The blue jugs of diesel exhaust fluid, DEF, the urea-based solution that every modern diesel engine requires to operate. Tractor Supply sells the 2.5-gallon jugs for somewhere around $12 to $15. If you do not drive a diesel, you might wonder why this matters to you. It matters because every long-haul truck on the interstate, every delivery truck that brings food to your grocery store, every farm tractor that brings in the harvest runs on diesel that requires DEF. In 2022, during the European urea shortage triggered by the Russian invasion of Ukraine, DEF availability in the United States became a real concern. The American Trucking Associations publicly warned that a DEF shortage would idle a significant portion of the national freight fleet within days. We came close. We did not cross the line, but we came close. The urea market remains tight. CF Industries, which produces the majority of American urea, has had production interruptions at its Donaldsonville, Louisiana plant within the past 2 years. A case of DEF in your garage, stored cool and out of sunlight, has a shelf life of about 2 years. If you drive a diesel pickup, or if you have a tractor, if you simply want one more form of insurance against the freight network seizing up, the time to put 6 jugs in the corner of your shop is now. Which brings me to the canning supplies, because what is happening to glass is connected to what is happening to steel. Number 5, wide-mouth canning jars and the lids that fit them. Tractor Supply has been carrying ball and cur jars for years. A 1-2 pack of wide-mouth quarts runs around $15. The lids, sold separately, are the part that matters. During the summer of 2021, canning lids became one of the hardest to find items in rural America. Newell Brands, which owns Ball & Kerr, publicly acknowledged that demand had outstripped their production capacity by a factor of 4. The lids were being rationed, people were paying triple on secondary markets. The reason was simple. Canning is a generational skill that the country had mostly forgotten until a moment came when people remembered. The supply chain was not built for that memory to return all at once. It has not been rebuilt. The lids are available right now at Tractor Supply at normal prices. Buy 3 boxes, buy 6. They store indefinitely in a cool, dry place. A canning lid is a small, flat piece of coated metal that, in the right moment, becomes the difference between food on the shelf and food in the compost. I learned that watching my grandmother put up green beans in 1987, and the lesson has not changed. Number 6, rope. Specifically, the spools of natural manila and synthetic polypropylene rope that Tractor Supply sells by the foot. Rope is one of those items that you do not think about until you need it, and when you need it, nothing else will substitute. 100 feet of 3/8 inch manila runs around $30. The polypropylene is cheaper. Both have uses. Manila for anything where grip matters, polypropylene for anything that touches water. The reason rope is on this list is that cordage manufacturing in the United States has consolidated dramatically over the past 20 years. Most of the natural fiber rope sold in America now comes from a small number of Philippine and Bangladeshi suppliers. The import data from the Bureau of Industry and Security shows that shipment volumes have been irregular since the Red Sea shipping disruptions began in late 2023. The vessels that move bulk cordage have been rerouting around the Cape of Good Hope, adding 2 weeks and significant cost. The price has not moved much yet. It will. 100 feet of good rope in your garage solves problems that you cannot anticipate. Buy it before you need it. Which led me to think about another item that solves problems you cannot anticipate. Number 7, duct tape. The real kind, the cloth-backed industrial grade, not the thin consumer rolls. Tractor Supply carries Gorilla and 3M in the proper weights. A roll runs between $8 and $14 depending on the brand and the width. Duct tape was invented during the Second World War by Johnson & Johnson to seal ammunition cases against moisture. The original product was called duct tape because it shed water like a duck's back. The cloth-backed industrial grade is the descendant of that wartime product, and it has uses that the thin consumer roll does not. It seals, it bandages, it reinforces, it patches a torn tarp in a thunderstorm. The reason it is on this list is that the adhesive industry has been quietly consolidating. The rubber-based adhesives that give industrial duct tape its grip are sourced from a small number of petrochemical producers. When petroleum feedstock prices move, adhesive prices move 6 to 9 months later. We are in that lag right now. Buy 4 rolls, store them flat in a cool place. They last for years. And while we are talking about things that store for years, let me take you to the seed rack. Number 8, open pollinated garden seed. Not the hybrid F1 packets, the open pollinated and heirloom varieties that Tractor Supply has been stocking in greater volume each year. A packet runs between $2 and $4. The distinction matters. A hybrid seed produces a plant that will not breed true the following season. An open pollinated seed produces a plant whose seeds you can save, plant the next year, and continue indefinitely. That is the difference between a one-season garden and a permanent food source. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault on the island of Spitsbergen, which the international community established in 2008, was built specifically because seed sovereignty is a category of risk that policymakers take seriously even when consumers do not. Buy the beans, buy the tomatoes, buy the squash, buy the lettuce and the cucumbers and the peppers. Store them in a sealed container in your freezer, and they will remain viable for 8 to 10 years. A $200 investment in open pollinated seed is a multi-generational asset. It is sitting on a wire rack at Tractor Supply right now for the price of a tank of gas, which made me think about what feeds the soil those seeds go into. Number 9, bagged feed corn and scratch grain for poultry. The 50-pound bag of scratch runs around $16. If you keep chickens, you already know this. If you do not, the reason it is on the list is that backyard poultry has been the fastest growing category in rural retail for 3 consecutive years. This is according to the data Tractor Supply itself has released in its quarterly investor calls. Avian influenza outbreaks have driven egg prices to historic highs multiple times in the past 3 years. The USDA's egg market report has shown wholesale prices spiking past $5 a dozen on multiple occasions. 6-laying hens fed on scratch grain and table scraps will produce roughly 2 dozen eggs a week through their productive years. The math is straightforward. A 50-pound bag of scratch feeds 6 hens for roughly 1 month. Stockpiling 4 bags, stored in metal cans with tight lids to keep rodents out, gives you a buffer that the grocery store cannot match. It is the kind of buffer that the people who already keep chickens have been quietly expanding all year, which brought me to the 10th item because it is connected. Number 10, the galvanized metal trash can. The 3-1 gallon size with the tight-fitting lid that Tractor Supply sells for around $35. This is not a trash can, or rather, it is a trash can, but its real value is as a rodent-proof food storage container. 50 pounds of dog food, 50 pounds of chicken feed, 50 pounds of any grain. Pellet product will sit safely inside a galvanized can with a tight lid for years. The reason it matters is that the price of galvanized steel has climbed significantly under the current tariff structure. The manufacturers who produce these cans have been quietly reducing the gauge of the metal. The cans that were available in 2019 were noticeably heavier than the cans available now. Buy two while the quality is still acceptable. They will outlast you, and they will protect your investment and everything else on this list. Let me pause here, because I want to step back from the items themselves and tell you something about what connects them. In 1973, during the OPEC oil embargo, American consumers experienced something that the country had not felt since the Second World War. The shelves at hardware stores and feed stores and gas stations emptied out, not because the products had stopped being made, but because the network that delivered them had been disrupted at a single choke point. The disruption lasted 6 months. It changed how a generation of Americans thought about supply. The people who lived through it and remembered it became the people who kept a freezer in the basement, a pantry in the spare room, and a can of gas in the garage. Their children mostly did not learn the lesson. Their grandchildren almost entirely did not. What I have been watching for the past 18 months in the trade publications and the federal data, the quiet shelf changes at stores like Tractor Supply is the early signal of a similar choke point. Not at a single port, not from a single embargo, but distributed across shipping lanes and manufacturing consolidations and tariff schedules and labor agreements. The mainstream business press does not cover this clearly because the news cycle prefers fast stories with named villains, and this story is slow and structural. The retailers do not advertise it because their job is to sell what is on the shelf today. Not to warn you about what may not be on the shelf in 18 months, the pattern is real, the window is open, let me show you the rest. Number 11, work gloves. The leather and the nitrile coated, the kind a man wears to do real work. Tractor Supply carries them in volume between $8 and $20 a pair depending on the grade. The reason they are on this list is that leather work gloves are largely imported from Pakistan and India. The tanning industry in both countries has been under environmental pressure that has reduced output. The nitrile-coated gloves depend on the nitrile butadiene rubber market, which is dominated by a small number of South Korean and Malaysian producers. Both supply chains are under quiet pressure. Buy 3 pairs of leather, 3 pairs of nitrile-coated, store them in a dry place. A pair of work gloves is the difference between getting a job done and losing a day to a torn hand. Number 12, the LED headlamp and the batteries that power it. Tractor Supply carries the Energizer and Coast headlamps for between $15 and $30. The bulk packs of AAA and AAA alkaline batteries for around $15 for $48. A headlamp with fresh batteries is the difference between a power outage that is an inconvenience and a power outage that is a danger. The alkaline batteries store for 10 years in their packaging. The headlamp itself lasts indefinitely. Buy 2 headlamps, buy 100 batteries, put them in a drawer you will remember. You will be glad you did the first time the lights go out on a December evening. You need to walk to the barn or the basement or the garage. Number 13, 2, cycle engine oil. The small bottles, the ones you mix into the gasoline that runs your chainsaw, your weed trimmer, your leaf blower, your generator, if it is the small 2, stroke type. Tractor Supply sells the small bottles for around $4, the larger jugs for around $15. Most people do not think about 2 cycle oil. It sits in the garage in a half-empty bottle for years, but here is what I found. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, has been moving forward with a phased restriction on certain small 2-stroke engines, citing emissions concerns that have been on the agency's radar since the California Air Resources Board began its own phase-out in 2022. The Federal Register notice I read was preliminary, but the direction is clear. The oils formulated for these engines, particularly the older specifications, are being reformulated and in some cases discontinued. The companies that make this oil are consolidating their product lines. The bottles that are on the shelf at Tractor Supply right now, in the formulations your existing chainsaw trimmer were designed to run on, are the last clean run of these products before the reformulation cycle hits the retail level. Buy 6 bottles, buy a dozen. They store indefinitely in a sealed container. A chainsaw without 2 cycle oil is a paperweight. A winter without a working chainsaw in a part of the country where firewood is heat is a winter that goes very badly. The mainstream press has not covered this because the story sits at the intersection of regulatory policy, rural lifestyle, and that intersection is not where the cameras point, but the trucker who hauls these bottles to the regional warehouse knows. The store manager who has been told which SKUs are being discontinued knows. The small engine repair shop owner who has been watching his parts catalog shrink knows. And now you know. Here's what I want you to take from all of this. The shelves at a store like Tractor Supply tell a story that the headlines do not, because the headlines move too fast. The shelves move at the speed of freight and policy and quiet manufacturer decisions. What you saw today is one slice of a larger pattern that I will keep documenting as it develops. If you are the kind of person who notices the empty space on a shelf before the sign goes up, you stock what you can while the stocking is good. I want to know which one of these 13 items you have already put back, or which one surprised you the most. Leave it in the comments below. I read them, I learned from them. This audience knows things I do not, and I want to hear it. If you want to keep walking these aisles with me, subscribe and stay close. The next dispatch I am working on involves what I found in the cold storage data for January. There is one category of frozen food that is about to become a great deal more interesting than anyone is talking about. I will see you there.